This weekend, I had the awesome pleasure of getting to go back to the movies, and I got to watch A Quiet Place Part 2 in my hometown theater, which gave me chills already before I even saw the movie. But boy, did this movie blow me away. And even though there are a ton of people who I have linked below who have done far better Quiet Place Part 2 reviews than I could ever do, I did want to give a couple of my thoughts on the film for those who might be interested in my opinion. To me, this film is all about two things. It is about juxtaposition and tension, which ironically is created by the first one of those two, juxtaposition. We've all been trained that A Quiet Place is indeed quiet. I think I saw a statistic this weekend that the first film is 80% silent or 80% non-dialogue. The best way to create tension is by making the start of the second movie loud, which no one I think expected going into this film. Horror, to me as a genre, relies heavily on norms within films and your conventions of the genre. Your expectation that when someone leans over the sink in a horror movie to wash their face, when they look back up in the mirror, there's gonna be someone behind them. A movie like Quiet Place, which has trained us all that the norm of the world is to be silent, the greatest thing that they could do was to show us day one of this all happening and show how loud real life actually is. Also, the sound design of this film, which everyone has said obviously, is immaculate. Things like tearing a fruit bag off at a grocery store, things you would never think to be loud, come across as deeply unsettling at the beginning of this film, creating a great atmosphere to start the movie off with. After the first film, everyone knows what it is that is trying to attack this family. We know the monsters, we know that they operate on hearing alone and echolocation, getting to see everything in full-blown light normally, and everyone is being loud. It's almost like the way Midsommar is unsettling because it's all happening in the daylight, yet no one thinks anything that's going on is wrong. This film, A Quiet Place Part 2, does the same thing. Additionally, I think what was great about this film, that again juxtaposed what had occurred in the first film, is the separation of the family through multiple different avenues in the film, which I don't want to go into because I know this film isn't out everywhere. You feel, again, deeply unsettled because in the first film, it takes place almost exclusively in one location, their building that they live in on the farm. At any other point, they are usually together, and when they're separated, they're not necessarily always in danger. Whereas in this film, that happens quite a bit for the majority of the film. As a viewer, you're instilled with so much dramatic irony that you feel trapped with these characters as they move towards their kind of collective demise, if you will. The other thing that I think this film continues from the first film that is so smart, and I have to give the props to John Krasinski. I'm not much for auteur theory, but dang, this guy really knows what he's doing with these films. You can tell that the story, which this film is exclusively written and directed by John. The first one, he had a couple writing partners, but here, that was completely on him, and boy, did he know what he wanted to do with this story. I feel like what is so great about this new age horror, if you will, this intelligent horror that is so focused on making the terror, the jumps, all of that so specific to the character and molding the story world and the conflict around the individual characters. I think that is so important and makes for a really unique film. A great example of this, if you haven't seen A Quiet Place or A Quiet Place Part 2, is Get Out. As a black man going through that story and that situation, there are certain things that are so specific to him as a character, motifs and realizations that would not be possible or as effective in other characters if it weren't for his specific circumstances. Similarly, in A Quiet Place, the very first one obviously focuses a lot on the fact that the family can communicate through sign language and doesn't have to talk in this situation where they cannot talk because of their deaf daughter Reagan. And Reagan's hearing impairment allows them to survive. A disability becomes a chance for survival, and I think that's really beautiful. And of course, at the end of A Quiet Place, if you haven't seen it, I'll put a little thing where you can skip to. Reagan's hearing aid, her cochlear implant, is able to be used as a weapon against these monsters, which is incredibly powerful. This specificity in film is what makes it so great. If you just plop a great character down in a world that is just like our own and isn't specified to them, there's no chance that all of the themes or messages that you're trying to create or the power of certain moments is going to be communicated. The one thing I will say that A Quiet Place Part 2 does better than A Quiet Place, just because I don't remember specifically if this is included in the first film, is that we are placed in the position of the characters. So when we follow Reagan at certain points, the audio completely cuts out and we are immediately aligned with her as a character, because just like her, we cannot hear what's going on around her. This happens usually at the most tense moments, which makes us as an audience who has now been used to this louder film is cut out completely from any sort of sensory things, and with the camera being stationary and not moving the way we would maybe want it to, and if we were in a similar situation, we feel trapped just like she is. And I think this use of film form that Krasinski has mastered in this film is so incredibly important. And again, if you can apply your film form and your story to the very specific aspects that you have created in characters, you are bound to make a great film, because no matter what, the story will feel like it makes sense because it is following the direct actions of your character. The last thing I really wanted to touch on, just because I think it was such an important moment both for what I'm talking about with specificity, tension, and juxtaposition. In this moment, it is very clear Reagan and the creatures are very distinctively inversely abled. That is a great writing piece, because in this scene specifically, Reagan can see the monster but cannot hear them, obviously because she is deaf, whereas the creature can hear Reagan and any noise that she makes but cannot see that she's standing right in front of it. And I think this is something that creates so much tension. Both of them are equally advantaged and disadvantaged at the same time. It's just so powerful sitting there waiting to see who's gonna make the first wrong move and what's gonna clue the other one in to what they're doing. If I have to give this film a rating, and I did on Letterboxd, if you want to follow me there, I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The only reason that I give it this rating is because, one, I've only seen it the one time, and to me, the first film is such a succinct and individual experience that I don't feel like the second one impacted me as much as the first did. However, I think they're two totally different films that, again, in some ways juxtapose one another and use different pieces of now audience and character information to build off the tension in each film. And I think that is something that is so unique about this series. So if the first film to me is almost perfect, then this just has to be slightly less than. I didn't personally have the same visceral reaction as I did the first film the first time I saw it. So that is where it's gonna lay for now, but I definitely see this one being ranked higher in the future when I'm able to rewatch it again. And for sure, anything that John Krasinski is working on and creating in the future, I cannot wait to see it. Still, fingers crossed for Mr. Fantastic though. That is going to be all, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. What did you think about A Quiet Place Part 2? Let me know down below in the comments. If you liked this review, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe and the notifications bells so you don't miss any videos from me, because I have a lot coming your way. Have an absolutely amazing day, and I'll see you guys in my very next video. Bye, y'all.